The Super Nintendo Classic came out 2 weeks at the time as of this recording ago. 2 weeks ago. Many people have been speculating that naturally the next classic system that is going to be shrunken down and probably increase another $20, but maybe they'll give you 4 controllers with it. Fingers crossed. Would be the... Oh, and then only give you 10 games, would be the Nintendo 64 Classic. And what games would be included on that. But it looks like there has been a copyright or patent, I guess, what's the term I'm thinking of?
Trademark?
Yeah. Trademark has been applied for that looks like the schematics of it look like the original Game Boy. So Nintendo is filing a trademark for something that looks a lot like the original Game Boy. A lot of people are taking that to mean the next classic system might be a Game Boy Classic, which I didn't think they would do. I thought they would just stick with consoles, but the more I thought about it, the more I was like, yeah, I would actually like to get behind that. So I wanted to talk about what Nintendo will probably do, but also what we would like them to do with this. Just because this is it's going to be a classic system based on the handheld. So how close are they going to stick with that? Is it going to be strictly a handheld? Is it going to be a console that you hook up to your TV, but it looks like the handheld? Or is it going to do both? That's kind of what I've been wondering. But I wanted to get your thoughts first.
Well, if they do decide to do a Game Boy Classic, I probably won't get one. Because I don't know. If I would imagine they would make it portable. I don't know why they would make it a home console. Because that to me just seems a little weird to do, but it's what they've been doing, so it wouldn't completely surprise me if they made it just like it looks like a Game Boy, but you plug it in your TV and it's on the TV. Honestly, the first console I ever owned was a Game Boy Color, and I know that there were different games for the Game Boy Color than there were for the Game Boy, but you can basically play them all.
It's kind of, I've come to accept the Game Boy Color is kind of like to the original Game Boy what the DSi and the new 3DS are to the DS and the 3DS.
Yeah. Even then, I don't really remember playing a lot of games on it other than one of the Donkey Kong Country games, Pokemon Crystal, and I think a Pokemon pinball game.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Pokemon pinball was fun.
It was pretty fun. Other than that, I can't really think of anything else. And really, the only reason I have Pokemon Gold is just like simply nostalgia. Like it's just amazing to just like look at that and be like, wow, I'm immediately like 3 years old again, watching my brother play Pokemon. Except I actually know what things mean.
Yeah.
Because back then I was just like, that looks cool. You should put it on your team. I was like, this is crap. I'm like, oh. I don't know.
How much older is your brother?
He is 3 years older than me.
Okay.
I think. Yes. Yeah. But yeah, I don't really have any other memories of playing any other kind of Game Boy games, so if this does come out, I'm probably not going to be as interested in it as it would be in the Super Nintendo, even though I haven't played any games on the Super Nintendo before, other than Mega Man X and Super Mario World, Turtles in Time, and there's another one, but I can't think of it. I played those from either emulators, them being re-released on other consoles, or one of my close friends, his dad actually still has his Super Nintendo, and he has Turtles in Time.
Did it yellow?
And no.
So he must have gotten one of the later models that they came to their senses.
It's actually really funny because he keeps it in his RV, and like whenever they go on a trip, I think they've got a PlayStation 2 and the Super Nintendo in there. I think that's just really cool. But I'm also not really super into the Nintendo 64. Just because, like, for the time that the Nintendo 64 came out, those graphics were, like, amazing. Because we hadn't entered...
It was 3D.
Yeah, we hadn't entered the world of 3D. So, like, to, like, 90s... people living in the 90s, that was like, oh my gosh, it's polygons. We haven't seen these. We've only used to pixels. And it was a really cool thing. And I understand that, like, that was, like, the turning point for, like, gaming, everything.
Right.
So I respect it, and I understand it for what it was then. Nowadays, the graphics are poop. And I don't like them because everything's all pointy.
Yeah, there's a reason why the N64 games keep getting remade. Not just remastered, remade.
Oh, yeah.
From the ground up.
The games are... And that's the thing that...
Because they're good games.
They are.
But they're covered in this veneer of ick.
Like, I love the games, I just hate the way they look. Like,
right.
Donkey Kong 64 was probably one of my favorite multiplayer games of all time. Super Smash Brothers was amazing.
Just don't look too closely at those character models because they were super low poly.
Oh my goodness.
Really low poly.
Also, I tried playing that game like a year ago with my roommates. I can't.
It plays so much differently from any of the other ones.
It's so floaty and slow.
It's floaty. My goodness, throws send you flying in that game.
Those were killers.
Overpowered, all of them.
Yeah.
And you can only throw in front or behind you. You can do up or down. You wouldn't edge grab unless you were facing the platform. It's definitely a dated game that I go back to every so often, just because I remember playing it, right. And I do wonder, like, can I still kick the computer's butt? And sure enough, I can. But and I like doing that. But as far as like a multiplayer experience, like any other Smash is better than that.
I do a few games and then I'm just like, no. Like Melee is about as far back as I'll go. And have fun with it. Super Mario 64 was still a really fun game. Banjo-Kazooie is probably one of my favorite 3D platformers of all time. Yes. Oh, Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask.
Yep.
Both just amazing games. It's like the games from are good. It's the graphics just like I can't. That being said, I imagine when they do the Nintendo 64, I'll probably get it anyway, just because I don't think Donkey Kong 64 will ever be accessible any other way.
And I heard some people talking about, they didn't think that Nintendo had the rights to release Donkey Kong 64 because it was developed by Rare. Hello, Donkey Kong Country, those were all developed by Rare. It's the character. They were a second-party developer who... That's like saying that if Retro Studios gets purchased by Sony, that they won't ever be able to re-release the Metroid Prime games. Of course they do. They have complete control over their IP. You don't have to worry about it. Now, other games like Conker's Bad Fur Day, Perfect Dark, they do not have the rights to that anymore. So you wouldn't see those on the Classic.
That would be sad.
So here's what I'm hoping that they... I think, so back with the Game Boy Classic, I think that it makes the least amount of sense. I don't think they'll do this, and I hope that they don't do this, but I think it makes the least amount of sense to make a Game Boy Classic that is strictly a handheld. And the reason why is you're going to have increased manufacturing costs because you're going to have it equipped with speakers and a screen. And heaven help you if they include the original green low refresh rate screen. I know you can still get them, just if you want to, fix your screen in your original DMG model Game Boy. But yeah, I'm pretty sure they won't do that. But if they were to do that would not be a good move in the least. I would actually be okay with them doing a home console version of the Game Boy, because the Game Boy only really has a couple of ways to play games on it on the big screen. There is the Super Game Boy for the Super Nintendo, which at best has, I think, S-Video out, so not HD. You've got the, I want to say the Pokemon transfer packs on the N64 would play the Game Boy, the Pokemon games, but just those, no other Game Boy games. So that's not really the same thing. And then you have the Game Boy Player on the GameCube, which at best gives you component out. So there's really not... I kind of feel like these classics are Nintendo's answer for playing their old library in HD without relying on the Wii U Virtual Console. So I think that they would actually go that route. I think there would be a way to plug it in. You would just have it be an emulation box that looks like a Game Boy. But the only thing that at that point is, well, are you going to have a controller that comes out of it? And if it's a controller, is it going to be like an NES controller? What do you do? What is the design going to look like? Because they've done all these systems so far as to be a smaller version of that particular system.
Thinking of the design of it itself is kind of like awkward.
Yeah.
Because you'd be like, is it standing up? Is it laying down? Why is it laying down? Why is it standing up? What's it standing up on?
Right. Or would you just be holding the system and then just have a really long HDMI cable going to your monitor?
That's even more awkward.
Yeah. I don't know how that would work. And then there's the other thing that they could do that would make it probably really expensive, is having it do both. It could be a handheld, and it could be on your TV that hooks to your TV. But then you kind of have the problem with, well, you have the Switch that does that. And I don't think they would go that route either. I really think that the most logical route to go would just make it a console that plugs into your TV, like you've done with the NES and Super NES, via HDMI at a 720p. Throw 30 games onto it, because there's plenty of games to pick from. And just go from there. I think it would be kind of cool if they did two different ones. If they did one that was just original black and white Game Boy, and then one that was Game Boy Color. I think that'd be pretty cool. And it would be neat if they could do like the original Game Boy one comes with 30 games like the NES one does, and then have 20 games included like the Super NES one does. For the Game Boy Color version. I think they could do that, and I think even if they released them within like a few months of each other, that'd be pretty cool. But you'd have your Marios on there, you'd have Link's Awakening, you would have You would have the 94 version of Donkey Kong on Game Boy is amazing. Like, it is my favorite puzzle game of all time. And I don't like puzzle games, but it's an amazing game. What? What? Because of Zelda? Yeah, I use a guide to play Zelda. Although,
what a plebe.
Although, Ocarina of Time on 3DS, I did play the Master Quest without a guide. And I got through it without... I think I got stuck once.
I think I've 100%ed almost every Zelda game I've ever played without a guide. And it was probably irritating at parts.
Mm-hmm.
But do you feel... I felt accomplished every time I completed one of those.
So the first Zelda game I ever played was Link's Awakening. And the reason why I played them with a guide is when I was about 8 years old, when I first played it, could not get past the third dungeon. The hint, it was something about saying the Pole's voice doesn't like loud sounds. Had no idea what that meant. Could not get past that part. Then when I was 14 years old, I went back to play it when it was on Game Boy Color. Got past it like that. Made me feel like such an idiot because it was so simple. It's games... See, I don't mind something being complicated and I can't figure it out when it's something that is so simple and I'm overthinking things and it was something really simple under my... That makes me feel stupid. And I really can't stand that feeling in video games. So if a game makes me feel like that ever since then, no. If it's Zelda, I'm getting the guide. I'm playing it with a guide.
I love those moments because I sit there and I'm like, really? That even I've had that feeling with some puzzles and it makes me feel silly and it's just like, oh, you game.
Yeah, I don't like that feeling at all. So you would need to put I think you would need to do Tetris somehow, get the rights to Tetris. You would need to do Pokemon. I don't know if you should do both red and blue. Maybe just do one or
green.
So here's how green works. I think a lot of people are confused about green because I actually heard another YouTube channel talking about this and they said, "Oh, green." People really don't know what green was. Green was blue. When we got blue, that was green.
Yeah.
Then Japan got blue, but their blue was a version that we never got. And it had all 151 that you could get without trading. So if that's what you're talking about when you say green, yes. You've already got the script translated. Just do it.
But I want it to be green.
That's fine. Because our green is blue. So their blue should be our green. Just wanted to get that because it really frustrates me when people talk about green, but they don't really clarify what they're talking about. You couldn't get the licensed games, of course, because you have Konami and Square willing to do things. I'm sure you could do like the Final Fantasy Adventure. You could do the Castlevania games that were on the Game Boy. I never played any of them, but then again, I haven't played Castlevania at all. You could... There's... Goodness.
Wario Land.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, the first Wario Land, which is the best one. Of course, yeah, Super Mario Land 1 and 2. DuckTales. There's a version of DuckTales on there. That's actually the version that I grew up with, not the NES version, but the Game Boy version. It's the same game, pretty much, a little bit shorter. I think it's a great idea. I just think I just have questions as far as how it will be executed. What will it look like? Will it have a controller? Will it just be a unit that connects it? I don't know what they would do with it.
I don't
But
know if I want to know.
all I know is when Nintendo does something, they never make something clunky, with the exception of maybe the Nintendo 64 controller. I'm just saying that everything else they do is very, like, especially nowadays, it's top notch. You're gonna get something that seems like it shouldn't work, but it does work somehow. So, what I would like to see, though, I would definitely like to see one that's based off the original Game Boy, have it be black and white on the games, and then for the Game Boy Color version, of course, obviously you have the Game Boy Color. And those games, like, I know that they were like colorized versions of classic Game Boy games, like Tetris DX, Link's Awakening DX, R-Type DX. They almost made a DX version of Metroid 2, but didn't happen. But yeah, I would like to see that. I definitely would. And then hack it and throw all the library on there, as you do. I'm excited for it. I would get it. Oh, and also, how would you do 2-player games? You know, it'd be really cool. This is how I think they could make it work. It would take quite a bit of programming, though. So the Game Boy screen has kind of a strange aspect ratio. It's taller than it is wider. I'm pretty sure on a 16:9 screen, you could fit 2 Game Boy screens on there and have it be split screen. And have it take up the full 16:9 of a modern widescreen TV. And basically have 2 versions of the emulated game running side by side. Because if they use the same tech that's in the NES and Super NES Classic, those aren't slouches when it comes to hardware. I think they could definitely run 2 emulators at the same time of the same game.
I can really only think of Tetris being the only one you would do for that.
Oh yeah, they would also have to include Kirby's Dream Land, Kirby's Pinball Land, Kirby's Dream Land 2. RC Program Racing, maybe? But then again, they didn't... Oh, yeah, well, I doubt we'll even see Tetris, though, to be honest. Because... And what would you do with Pokemon? Would that just be a version of Pokemon that you couldn't trade? Would you have to have a link cable and trade with someone else? Oh, it gets so silly.
A lot of questions.
There are many questions, because the Game Boy is an interesting, unique case. That's not as simple as doing like a Nintendo 64 Classic, although that also will have its problems. Will it have 4 controller ports or just 2?
Probably just have 2.
How many controllers will it come with? 1 or 2?
2.
Will the controllers come with a rumble pack built in or not?
Probably not.
You know? What about games that required a memory card?
Don't need it. That's the future. We don't use memory cards.
Of course.
We use USB drives.
We're advanced.
That's completely not a memory card.